Hey everyone, James here, bringing you another Italian genre film review. Today I'm going to be talking about what I would classify as a Eurocrime polizioteschi film. I Am Afraid, 1977, Un Paura, excuse my very bad Italian. And in my opinion, this is one of the great unsung Eurocrime films that people absolutely need to check out. This might be my favorite of the Damiano Damiani Eurocrime films. Might be my favorite Damiani period. And I think this is just a very, very good movie that more people should know about. Okay, so here is the quick synopsis I wrote up here. A policeman in the bodyguard unit is reluctantly drawn into a conspiracy that involved a past terrorist attack. I think if you were to look around at people who have talked about Eurocrime polizioteschi films, this film is definitely quite well liked, but I think it's also very, very underseen. It's not particularly like one of those that you're going to run up against very often. And I think it desperately needs something like a Blu-ray restoration. I suspect there's some really good cinematography here. I had to watch kind of more of a, I don't know what quality it was, maybe an old DVD, something like that. But the cinematography here done by Luigi Cavalier, one of the great Italian cinematographers, Deep Red. He also did Goodbye and Amen with Damiani, that came out in the same year. And Roberto Curti in the book Italian Crime Filmography describes this one as one of the Damiani masterpiece too. So I think this is one that should absolutely be seen. Why would you watch this film? Well, it's a really well-rounded, terrific paranoid 70s drama. It has a great performance at the center of it, and I think it's one of the best films, period, to come out of kind of this era of Italian films. Okay, so in terms of where Damiani was career-wise, he'd already kind of done a lot of his films set in Sicily. He was coming off of A Genius, Two Friends, and an Idiot, which is a spaghetti western, late-cycle spaghetti western he did in the mid-70s, collaborated with Leone on that one. By most people, I think it would be considered a failure. Certainly, compared to its very ambitious scope, I think it would be considered not a particularly good film. So coming back to kind of like more familiar ground of kind of contemporary set things. So this, like a lot of Damiani films, will, depending on who you talk to, could be Eurocrime or not. I think this one fits a little neater into that category than something like his mafia films set in southern Italy are. Fit a little more clearly into kind of our image of, or what the popular image is of the polizioteschi. This one's set in Rome. And I think it's one of the ones that is most explicitly kind of the years of lead. And what do I mean by that? That's the period from 1968 to around 1980, 1982, where there was just a lot of political turmoil. There were assassinations, political assassinations, things like that, kidnappings. And so this one, why is it explicitly that? Well, part of the reason is because the main character is Brigadier Graziano, played by the great Gian Maria Vogliante, is a member of kind of the bodyguard unit that protects judges from political assassination. So he is basically guarding judges there. And yeah, so this one, very, very explicitly kind of the years of lead. Years of lead, we think about it being kind of more in that central to northern Italy range. So kind of Milan, Rome, rather than kind of southern Italy, where kind of the things that he focuses on there are kind of the very entrenched mafia ties and political corruption and things like that. This one also involves political corruption, but it's a little bit of a different nature. So Graziano had recently kind of survived an assassination attempt on one of the judges or one of the people he was guarding, and so he gets assigned to presumably an easier judge to guard, one that focuses on kind of like old-style cases. Now what happens is the old-style case involves into a very political conspiracy that involves people much, much higher up. So inadvertently, he kind of gets drawn into this. Gian Maria Vogliante is only in, I believe, 2 Damiani films, 2 of his very best, A Bullet for the General, which comes about a decade before this film, as well as this movie. And it's a very interesting portrayal. Vogliante was very, very political. He was interested in a lot of class consciousness and things like that. I think I don't know if he explicitly was a communist, but he was certainly very, very left-leaning. So this is a film that kind of explores the police in a little bit of a different facet. if we think about this time period in Italian crime films, something like the Maurizio Merli films were kind of at the peak. And you could very much see this film as a response to that, because the character Graziano, Brigadier Graziano, is completely different from kind of your Dirty Harry types that Merli was super well known for playing. So it's a very, very multifaceted performance. If we think about it, these two actors are kind of at extremes too. Vogliante is very good at kind of like this internalized thing. Merli is super one note. He's really only capable of one sort of thing, and whether you like that or not depends on your personality and whether you like kind of the Dirty Harry style films. I quite enjoy those films too, but it's hard to deny that Vogliante is doing quite a bit more here. It's also an interesting contrast with another famous Vogliante film, the Elio Petri film, Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, where he plays kind of like this fascist, a very well-dressed person. I forget if he's a police officer exactly, but someone on the side of the law. And here he is very schleppy. He dresses down. He's definitely amongst the poorer demographic here. And so he's also, personality-wise, is very different. In that film, he exudes kind of confidence and he's super cocky. This film, he's very, very reluctant. And in that sense, it's another big contrast with the kind of Dirty Harry style cops that Merli was playing, or a lot of people were playing at the time too. Very much kind of like an anti-hero, but not in like kind of the anti-hero dickish way, more in like anti-hero as in the title, I Am Afraid. So you can really tell that he is just very, very internal, and the way he processes information is very important for the film, because there's a lot of stuff that he ends up learning that he just really wishes he didn't know, because he really doesn't want to get involved in these conspiracies. So by no means is he like a person that really wants to get involved. He just wants to survive and exist in this world. But the judge that he ends up defending kind of picks up on the fact that this guy is, he wants justice, maybe deep down somewhere in that internalized conscious. And he also is smart, and he is able to pick up on different things that are happening, much to kind of Brigadier Graziano's chagrin. So in that sense, it's a very, very unique role. Damiani's heroes are very, very interesting, just the people he chooses to focus his films on. A lot of people that are pretty much doomed to fight up against the system and lose. And people will be varying different amounts of kind of like wanting to do that. You have people like Martin Balsam's character in Confessions of a Police Captain, who is more than willing to kind of push the limits and of what a captain can do, and eventually kind of breaks and ends up doing assassination himself and going to prison, versus the very, very heavily reluctant Vogliante in this film. So yeah, in that sense, it's a very different role for Vogliante, but he is a very, very good actor with excellent range, so I think he pulls it off very, very well. The conspiracy involves kind of this terrorist attack that happens. It's interesting the way that violence is shown. A lot of it happens off screen here, but we do still get like these very violent, bloody images in our head. There are like some pans where we go over the scene and then we see a couple of bodies, or we see like explosions and things like that. So it happens very, very suddenly. It's filmed, I think, fairly differently from kind of the standard set pieces at the time too. And another way that this film really succeeds is it's very much a slow burn, and that's very much kind of to my personal taste as well. This might be the most kind of Pakula-like, or maybe even Sidney Lumet-like. Damiani has been called kind of like one of the most American directors, and if we think about American films at that time, 60s, 70s films, I think those directors would definitely be kind of ones that we would think about. It sort of builds and builds and builds. It's a slow burn with kind of occasional explosive violence. It's a little bit longer, like a lot of Damiani films, running almost 2 hours, but it's really well plotted, and I think it's really, really lean. There's very little I would cut here. So I think Damiani is really good at kind of weaving these very intricate plots and a lot of stuff going on, and it moves along at its own pace. Would I say this is slower than your average Eurocrime? Yes, I would, but I think it kind of deserves that runtime. I think if you run this film at 90 minutes, I think too much is cut here. So eventually, at a certain point, the judge, and for those of you that don't follow the show, I do spoil the films here, as you may have picked up. The judge that he has been guarding eventually is assassinated, and so he gets kind of drawn in even further, and so he gets assigned to kind of the judge that's replacing it, who is played by Mario Ador. And it's interesting, sort of the contrast. Voyante's character Graziano, as well as the judge, the older judge he was guarding originally, kind of had this like older, world-weary look. You could tell they're both kind of lonely men, even though it's not explicitly spelled out in the case of Brigadier Graziano. Versus Ador, who is married, who dresses very well, has a very, very nice apartment, and he is also the one that is corrupt. So it's interesting just to draw those sort of contrasts just in terms of kind of like the set designs and things like that. The score by Riz Ortolani is propulsive and really, really good. He does very good work like a lot of the Italian composers at the time. Nice to see Adorf in here. Definitely not kind of like the ultimate Adorf role. I would say that's Italian connection for sure, but it's always nice to see him pop up here. He's really only in like kind of the back 40 minutes or so of the film. This is just a really, really nice kind of crime conspiracy film. And the conclusion is just vintage Damiani, where we have Graziano seemingly to take victory, but he's ultimately a pawn, and it is futile to go against the system. He is very, very small potatoes, and he eventually is, despite punching well above his weight for a lot of the film, he eventually is gunned down. It's just really, really terrific. You have kind of the reluctant hero really, really leaning into full reluctance here, so I really like that. Okay, so who won the film? I would give it to Damiani. As much as I like the Voyante performance, I think the way that this whole film is crafted and things like that is just really well done. The set pieces that occur are all great. The way it opens with kind of these political assassinations starting the tone. We even have like kind of the dead voicing over who they are in the opening set. I really like that touch as well. He got a writing credit here too. Sort of the set piece where the judge does get assassinated, that one is well done too. And the final theatrical set piece, I think, is fantastic as well. So all of the things are just really, really well done. This is very, very little I would cut for this film. I think it's definitely one of the best Poliziotteschi Eurocrime films. I think this would also be an excellent introduction for people that are curious, but might be a little bit put off by sort of the full grindhouse that sort of the Lenzi or the Lenzi films in particular, but maybe also to some extent the Castellari films are. Double feature? Maybe I'd pair this with the other film that Damiani did from the same year, Goodbye and Amen, both 1977. I think that one is probably a little bit less sharp in sort of its criticisms and things like that, but has some similar themes. In that case, it's the kind of the system and the institution is the American CIA, so I would go with that. Rating, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I think it was a really solid movie. I would strongly recommend anyone that likes Eurocrime or Poliziotteschi's to check this one out. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.